We are live from Islamabad, where the talks are happening between Iran and US, Pakistan hosting these talks. And while we are not reporting exactly what these talks are about, we do know that the world is looking forward to some good news which are directly impacting the peace and security around us. Kamran, we were talking about the security architecture around in the Gulf in particular changing after this. Would that change in favor of US or in favor of these Gulf states? For example, in my opinion, petrodollar is something that they cannot escape in real time. At the same time, the requirement from Iran that the military bases from this region be evacuated. You think it's that easy?
I don't think so. It is easy. Of course, that we know Iran has come up with this demand that US vacate all their bases from the Gulf countries. So I think, imagine that if US does agree and withdraw from the Gulf countries, so this means that Iran is a clear victor, and so I think it is we can understand that they have started from the maximalist position. But having said that, I think even if not on the demand of Iran, US vacate those bases, I'm sure that there must have been discussions within the Gulf countries that should they need to change their approach.
The one thing that they don't have, they can't secure themselves. So what will happen? Will they look for other security guarantors? Would they want to increase their own defense budgets? Would some countries actually start thinking about nuclearizing themselves? I think all of these big questions will not be settled overnight, but they will certainly be asked. And I think there will certainly be a discussion about them once this conflict ends.
What do you think about it? Like, are we moving towards an era where countries now want to diversify their security umbrellas? And the other point may be that now they want to look towards a power or a bloc or a region that is a stability provider rather than the security issue.
It's a very interesting debate. I think before this conflict and prior conflicts, people thought that the era of conventional war perhaps is now over. So you have to be economically strong, so then you don't need strong armies. But what happened over the last few years or a decade or so, it appears that we are back to square one. I think the countries with a strong military now have more importance than with a strong economy. In fact, that you cannot have strong economy without a strong military. So what I see, I think, as we were earlier talking about, that the so-called rule-based order post-Second World War has really unraveled. So now we are looking at a new global order, and during this transition period, I feel, yes, that countries would like to align themselves with those who have a strong military. So probably they would like to protect their interests by having small alliances, by blocks. That's the way forward, and I think that is why many people are looking at when Pakistan had this mutual defense agreement with Saudi Arabia. Then there were reports that other countries like Turkey and maybe Egypt and others are wanted to join this group, and we saw that prior to the ceasefire and now the talks that are taking place, there was a quadrilateral kind of a arrangement. Two meetings took place, one in Riyadh, the other in Islamabad, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt and Saudi Arabia. So some people feel that this could be a start of forming of a small bloc or an alliance to protect your interests. To interest. So certainly I think during this transition period, I feel that countries would look for some kind of small alliances where they can protect their interests.
So diversification of security architecture of the world is happening, and I think the diversification of currencies. I think, are we forecasting that as well?
Well, I think definitely this talk about how this whole petrodollar economy can transform into something else. We are already talking about how payments can be done in yuan, and we've already seen that in this conflict where Iran was charging money in yuan and depositing them in Chinese banks. We've always had this debate about guns versus butter. and the traditional argument has been that, you know, butter is always preferable to guns. Now it just, and we've always had more guns than butter. and that's been our just been painted as our weakness.
Yeah.
But for once today, it's been painted as a strength. That if you have lots of butter, you don't have guns, you're in trouble. So you better have. So now actually our challenge is to now that we have big guns, we need to get more butter. And that's the key challenge which we need to discuss on. But absolutely, I think today, you know, if there is one major change that has happened in Pakistan, well, I would say major because there wasn't much of a disagreement about Pakistan going nuclear, except for a small minority. Today, that small minority is also saying, "Thank God we went nuclear." And I think after now, there is not going to be any disagreement about the importance of that step that we took, you know, so many years ago. And because of that, today we are in a position where we are hosting talks between a superpower and a regional power.
And a country that has been under sanctions for so long, giving such a surprise to the world. That is also a surprise in my opinion. What does that teach us? Iran's case, having asymmetry in the warfare, going indigenous, relying on themselves. What is that a couple of set of bunch of things that you think have made that nation survive so well?
First of all, I think on the question of this Pakistan being a nuclear, I think I was on international channel and there was a American commentator and he made a very important point, and he said that you know, Pakistan's case is very interesting. Pakistan's field marshal, you know, looking after or, you know, being part of this process, a country with the nuclear weapons, so you cannot deny that, you know, ignore the symbolism. So he was saying that it does not necessarily mean that Pakistan would probably use, you know, nuclear weapons, but the symbolism is important. So you can imagine it is not just when you, you know, obviously we became nuclear not necessarily or certainly not to use them, but it is for our deterrence. But even peace times or when we are making efforts for peace, you can imagine that how this nuclear, being a nuclear, you know, helped our cause. Yes. Talking about, I think, Iran's case, certainly I think I may have a, you know, unpopular view as well. Some people say that, suppose that they always have this, you know, policy. The major contention point, of course, that West always believed that they were after nuclear weapons. They always deny that. They also cite the fatwa and decree of their supreme leader that, you know, seeking nuclear weapons is un-Islamic. But then people say that when you are challenging, you say death to America or death to Israel, so then you also have to make preparation accordingly. So I think Israel know for sure they were looking for this opportunity to hit back or, you know, eliminate Iran, and the only, you know, obstacle was, of course, that no other American president before President Trump was willing to take that bait, because whenever they pushed for this kind of action, they assessed, you know, their own, you know, situation and found out that America joining this kind of a venture is not going to serve their interest. But President Trump thought differently. So, I mean, this is also the question that Iran needs to think. Certainly, if they are not seeking nuclear weapons, so they have abundance of natural resources, they have gas, they have oil, they have everything. So probably it is time that they need to reorient their strategy as well. So one way is that you just reevaluate your strategy that you have shown. You know, people, you know, Israel and America thought that it would be like a cakewalk. They resisted, both the US and Israel. And now probably I think it is time that they need to focus on the well-being of their people. And if they are able to show some pragmatism and able to extract some serious concessions and agree on some kind of framework where they can protect their own interests as well as interest of their people, I think that would be a great thing.
Yeah, well, as this conflict is moving on, the question remains whether the regime change, which according to President Trump is now replaced by more friendly people, However, there is another camp that says now there is a more hardliner control in Iran because IRGC is more in control of the things than before. So where are we heading? Are we heading towards a different Middle East, Gulf states thinking differently, a different Iran, or this is a continuing situation which will resurface from time to time? Stay tuned, we'll take a short break here.